Welcome back to The Big Show. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people, and my next guest is an all-rounder. He's an author. He's just released his new autobiography. He's a TV presenter. He's got his own chat show, The Alan Titchmarsh Show. He's a radio presenter and a gardener. And when I caught up with Alan, I asked him, did he mind being a jack of all trades?
I mean, it's easy for you to say. I couldn't possibly comment. I've always just enjoyed variety and being stimulated. And I think if you do the same thing for too long, not only do you get bored, but I think listeners and viewers probably get a bit tired of seeing you. So there is enough misery on TV, and I think, we get enough news programmes. I can do with, one, maybe two news bulletins a day, one at the beginning and one at the end, just to round up what's happened. That's enough. I want to be entertained, I want to be educated, but above all, I want to have a bit of escapism as well. I don't necessarily always want to be challenged. I think a lot of the people who make television programmes don't realise that most of us are challenged all day in our working lives, and when we sit down in front of the TV, we like a bit of Poirot, or a bit of Midsummer Murders. We like a good documentary and a good nature programme as well, but we do want to be taken out of ourselves and occasionally allowed to relax.
Do you care who reads your news?
As long as they do it well, no. I don't care whether it's a man or a woman, as long as the intonation isn't irritating and they don't all lapse into newspeak. And then they do a sentence and it goes down at the end. And then if you listen, you realise they do it all the time. And that drives me bananas. But there is a knack and there's a skill to reading the news, and don't let anybody tell you, oh, they're only reading autocue, because there isn't an only reading autocue, there's a learning how to do it properly. But that said, once you've got the knack, being a newsreader isn't the most challenging job on earth.
What are you? Are you a presenter, a personality, or a journalist? How do you regard what you do on the telly?
Well, I started off as a journalist. I was an editor, firstly of books, gardening books, and then gardening magazines. So I, way back, was a member of the NUJ. So I was a journalist first, then a writer, then I became a presenter. I always feel that the words personality and celebrity are rather vacuous. They imply that either nobody else is one or nobody else has got a personality. So I think they're rather daft names, really. There's a counter side to being a famous face as well, and that is that there's a degree of responsibility that goes with it. And I think when you go down the street, you have a duty to be pleasant to folk. As two men came down the street once, and one of them knew which was my car, and he said to the mate with him, he said, "You see that?" He said, "We paid for that." And I thought, yeah, actually you did, and thank you very much.
There's nothing more humbling than the public, is there? Now, I want to talk to you about your TV interviewing, because you've really had everybody on over the years. Who have you enjoyed interviewing the most?
Oh, there are too many to speak of. Most recently, Julie Walters. Liza Minnelli was quite fun, if challenging. Alan Bennett is an all-time favourite, and Dirk Bogarde. Loved doing them.
Is it still a thrill when they say yes? Because they could say no.
Yes, it is. I think the danger is when you imagine that it might be quite as much of a thrill for your viewer as it is for you. I mean, people get very excited when you've got the Prime Minister coming on. And I always say, well, hang on a minute. They see him on the box in the corner every blessed day. They're not thrilled that, oh, look, Alan Titchmarsh has got him today. It's just another interview as far as they're concerned. From your point of view, it might be special. And I try and make every interview worth watching. But, you've got to just keep your feet on the ground with these interviews as well.
Have you done Al Gordon yet?
I haven't done Gordon, I've done David Cameron.
What did you think?
Impressed. I mean, he can get more and more in touch with the people than he is at the moment. I don't just mean because he went to eat, and it's not that, but he is, as they all have to be, quite guarded. And as the interview progressed, he became more, I don't mean unguarded, but more forthcoming. And I think David will find a way of relating better to people without, necessarily giving away all of his private life. I mean, I understand and sympathise with that. I think he can connect perhaps slightly better than he does at the moment. But, he's, in relative terms, quite new to it all. And I think it's an unforgiving world, the world of politics.
And when you've got a guest of that calibre, how does it feel when the red light goes on and you're going into millions of people's homes and it's all about you?
I don't get nervous. I get a lift. It's kind of, right, let's get on. But not nerves anymore. I can't afford to get nerves and let them get in the way. And, I'm not saving lives. That's the bottom line. I'm not poised with a scalpel over somebody's body. I'm trying to offer them entertainment in the afternoon. That said, I take my job very seriously. I was saying to somebody this morning about directors. I don't work with directors who shout. you can achieve what you want to achieve without temperament, and you can be professional and exacting without being tricky. And I prefer people who can achieve their ends by calm means.
Those moments when guests don't want to talk, I need your help with this. What do I do to make it interesting and get through it?
Well, the tendency when people won't talk is to talk more yourself and to talk louder and faster. And strange enough, it's rather like waking up somebody in the audience who's nodded off, if you've got an audience. And the natural thing to do is to speak faster and to raise your voice. Well, actually, the most effective way is just to stop completely. And they suddenly realise there's silence there. And if they're asleep in the audience, they wake up because they think something's gone wrong. And if you're interviewing them and you don't fill the gap, then they have to fill it. So that can help sometimes. Body language is a great help in interviews. You've got to be really approachable body-wise. Leaning forward sometimes helps. And in other instances, leaning back helps. But body language is key. I'm very picky about how far away my chair is from my guest. And I bet, strangely enough, if you took a tape measure nose to nose between me and my guests, I bet it would never vary more than an inch. It's curious that. But you know those people who stand too close to you when they speak to you and you kind of want to stand back, space. And interviewing is quite critical in terms of not only body language but distance apart.
And of course you do the occasional groping, don't you, of the leg?
I am a bit of a toucher, and I try and refrain from that. But it's to make a point. I know some people perhaps don't like it. It's a natural characteristic, and I have to try and restrain myself. But I am a bit of a tapper, not a groper. I love doing what I do. To have your own chat show for an hour, whatever time it is the most supreme treat. I love it. Every day is a different challenge. Every day is different. And the guests all demand different things of you. I love our little sort of 15, 20-minute debate that we have on something topical. I like the guests I have who do the papers and topical tips and things at the top. It's just... I fear being rumbled on the chat show because it is such a pleasure to do. I hope I can carry on doing it for yonks.
I just want to talk to you about the scandal regarding pay for TV presenters. Do you think that the money they're paid is obscene, and would you be willing to take a pay cut if they ask you to?
In answer to the first question, I think some of the sums are ridiculously high. It is a competitive market, you have to remember that. And it's all right saying if you work for the BBC you shouldn't get X. Well, nobody knows what the other side pay as well. I think it does need watching. It has got a bit obscene, the top end. But my first wage packet was £3.07 and sixpence. And I've worked extremely hard to do a bit better than that. So from my point of view, I think, you know, you enter a market and you become a part of it. But I don't think necessarily other people need to know what you earn.
Was it a showbiz in your day in terms of the pay packet? I don't want to know what that is, but when you were at your peak in the 80s on the daytime show, were you able to earn enough money, or do you look back now and think, God, I wish I could start again now?
I earned a fraction of what I earn now back then, but compared with gardening, it was an extremely good wage. You must remember that most people in my line are on the basic agricultural wage. Therefore, as well as feeling pleased that I earn what I earn, I also feel a degree of guilt in that I got where I am by gardening, basically, and then by working extremely hard and writing about it and broadcasting. But I've been very lucky to get what I do get. And I do think there's an obligation when you're in such a fortunate position that you do also fulfil your obligations in terms of, you know, charitable work and helping other folk as well.
Do you ever have a moment when you wonder, am I up to this? Am I really deserving of this adoration and my own shows and all these books and articles?
I don't believe in the adoration bit. It's not adoration. I mean, people are very, I think, sanguine about you. And for every person that thinks you're wonderful, there's another one who thinks you're a load of rubbish. Clear it off. Why is he on the whole time? So I never get complacent. And every day, you know, I do. And I'm not, you know, being sort of disingenuous about it. I do feel extremely grateful to be doing what I do. And I think, you know, I'm extremely fortunate to be in this situation, to be doing a job I love and also to be being well remunerated for it. I'm very, very lucky.
Now, I'm just going down my list of questions that I didn't bother to write, by the way. Is there any business I can do for you? You didn't just come in here to talk to me because I'm a nice guy, did you?
No, I came in here to plug my book, didn't I?
You've got a book?
I've got a book.
And what's it about?
It's the third volume of memoirs, and I did one that sort of covered everything called Trial and Error years ago. And it did so well, and they said, we want another. And I said, well, I've only lived once. But I did a bit of James Bond, and I lived twice. I then wrote Nobbut a Lad, which is about my Yorkshire childhood. And it finished when I left school. So now I'm on to youth and love affairs and all those unfortunate things that happen to you when you're a lad. And my gardening years, and it's called Knave of Spades. And it picks up from where I left school at 15, went to work in the nursery and went on through college and Kew Gardens and then into writing and radio and telly. So it's the later years, as it were, this one.
I know we've talked about this before, where you were blessed that not everybody gets today was that wonderful sense of family and community. Not so much of that is around these days, is it?
No, and common sense seems to have taken the back seat, and I think that there's a lot of things in life, it sorts you out. Common sense, instinct, intuition and experience, they're all bound up together, and they're, I think, far greater things to have at your side in life than a series of government rules and regulations. If I like to be self-regulating as much as anything, and I think it irritates me to a degree when I can't be, when I'm told I have to have lorries beeping when they reverse because I can't be trusted to look both ways before I cross the road. Where if I'm doing anything, I seem to have to wear a fluorescent jacket, which means that as everybody's got a green fluorescent jacket on, nobody stands out. And also when I buy a packet of peanuts, I have to be warned that the packet may indeed contain nuts and not crisps. And like all old curmudgeons, it begins to drive you nuts after a while, doesn't it?
So there's one question I could have asked you today in our final minute. What would it have been? There must be something that you were hoping I was going to ask you.
I always approach interviews not wanting to know the questions and being quite relieved when they're different from the ones I expected. And I can honestly say that every single question you just asked me was completely unexpected.
It's because I didn't bother writing anything down. It's not a talent.
I'm so relieved you didn't ask me why your wisteria was flower.
Alan Titchmarsh, thank you so much for coming on the programme again. You must have better people to talk to than me.
Yes, I must. Goodbye.
But lovely to see you. And the new book's in the stores now. Knave of Spades. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alex. Cheers.